So today we are discussing how we manage customer relationships, especially when it regards to customers who are wrong. I don't know about you guys, but where I have been and in the long entrepreneurial career that I have had, which is spanning, I would say maybe 15. I know Janta has been 13 years old, but I've had other ventures that I've had. But I have had encounters where I have had to let customers go, or it's just become very difficult to work with particular customers. And I know the adage where you're saying customer is king, and they are, and we're not refusing that, but they're not always right. And then as business owners, we need to know where to draw the line and how to do it so that we're not putting our businesses in disrepute. We don't want to put your business in a point where you're losing revenue because you've had to deal with some nasty clients. I don't know about you, and I have dealt with clients who are either abusive or they are not aligned with what you're supposed to be delivering to them. For example, if you're delivering a service and it requires the customer's input for the project to be successful, so and they're not aligned in terms of they're not doing their part for you to be able to successfully deliver a project. So for example, if you're an IT company and you sell systems, for example, and for you to deliver, for example, an enterprise resource solution, or resource planning solution, you require the customer to give you some data, or maybe some processes or documented processes or something like that, and they're not able to give you that, and then they're blaming you for the delays in the projects, or they're blaming you for being too expensive, or they're just being difficult, or the person who you agreed with is not the person who you're having to work with, and the relationship is becoming so difficult, and it's getting to a point where you're having project delays and you are not able to actualize on the project, and it's delaying even other projects because you're not able to move on to another project. So, and I'm sure in your context as an entrepreneur, you've dealt with difficult clients. I'm sure, and please comment in the comment section below, whether on your Instagram or on Facebook or on YouTube or TikTok. Just comment and tell us what experiences you've had with customers, so that we even know on your end what you're going through, so that you'll see other people are also suffering the way you're suffering. It's also good to be in this camaraderie together, so we understand how to handle such situations. And if you have a situation that is current and you want some guidance, or you want an answer to how do you handle it, please put it in the comment section below, and we will answer it during this live. So fantastic. So what are we thinking about in terms of the customer being difficult? I don't know if you guys understand the current moment thing, and when we're talking about a Karen, and sorry to all Karens that are going to be watching this video, but when we're talking about the current moment, is this customer is just not, I don't want to use the word smart, but they're just not aware of how their communication is affecting whatever you're supposed to deliver, or they're just being difficult. They're being either crazy, they're not making any sense. I mean, I'm sure you've seen videos of customers walking into shops. They want to try everything, then they leave without buying. Or you have a customer who will walk in and pick the most expensive item, and then they want it in a color that they know is not there. Or you have a shop, and a customer will demand something that you're not stocking, and then put a bad review online about your services. Or if you run a restaurant, they have unreasonable expectations. They want their food in a time, they want a complicated item, maybe that's not even on the menu. They want it delivered quickly. They're complaining about, I know I have this even with my friends. I know they can be difficult clients. They talk about eggs that are, a specific way, or meat that is cooked a certain way, and then if it is just a tad bit overdone or a tad bit underdone, they want to send it back to the kitchen. If you're running a business, I'm sure you have encountered very, very difficult clients. So I would really want to hear from you. What is the worst moment you've had dealing with a client? Have they been abusive to you or to your employees? Have they fought with your employees or fought with you? Have they refused to pay you? You know, I think that one is a bit painful, especially if you've created something. I remember once I had started a side hustle. Even business people start side hustles, and I had started baking low calorie, low sugar items, and I was baking this cake for a particular client, and it was such a difficult ask because they wanted a cake that was sugar free but still exactly looking like a normal cake. And it was her son's birthday, and she wanted headphones done on it, and I don't know what kind of design etc. And when I delivered the cake, she came up with random excuses. Mara, her salary had not been paid. I don't know what happened. And I think if you've been in the creative space and you've worked all night on a project, or you have baked all night, or you have created something all night, I think it's very painful when a customer refuses to pay or just comes up with weird excuses as to why they will not pay you. So maybe comment in the comment section and tell us, what is the biggest nightmare you've had with a particular client? I think that for me would be consoling based on what I have been going through, so that I know I'm not alone in this journey, and for anyone who's watching, they're also not alone in this journey. I would really, really want to hear what guys have gone through out there with customers. Alright, so when you've dealt with a customer who is wrong, say for example, you are selling clothes and you have given the specifications of a particular item. You say this is a cotton shirt, but the customer is telling you, no, this one is polyester. And they're being proud and they're like, no. And perhaps maybe it was a delivery that already was paid for, so you've already received the money. But then they're complaining about quality, and you are double sure you're correct and the customer is wrong. How do you handle such a situation? I believe the first thing is ensure that communication is done well, and if possible, documented. If you're able to document communication with the client, it will help you a ton. I cannot even overemphasize this. If it is possible, especially if you have a client you're dealing with on phone, make sure you always follow up with an email or follow up with a text or WhatsApp or whatever, but have a written email or text conversation with your client so that you have something to get back to. And this means that from the first time you're dealing with a customer, ensure you have a written brief of what they want. So for example, someone is ordering 3 shirts, 2 trousers. For example, if you're selling apparel, make sure that when the customer calls to ask for the order, that you will respond to them and say, let me ensure I've gotten your order right. You want this and this and this and this, and you want it delivered by this time, and this is the price, and you're going to pay via card payment or by mobile money payment, regardless of what you're doing. If you don't have a written brief, it is very hard to defend yourself later. So if you're able to put in processes in your business, and it doesn't matter what kind of business it is, so long as you're able to communicate with the customer and you have their contact, or if the contact is there. Say for example, if it's in a restaurant, you will see this in a lot of restaurants. They will come with a book, they will take your order, then they will read back your order to you so that they confirm. So that if they've read back to the order to you, then later on when there are issues, she can or he can always show you what her written notes were, so that you're able to confirm, yes, that's was what I ordered for. So if you're able to document any communication you have between you and the customer, then you're able to now handle any disputes that come thereafter. Okay.
There's a comment.
Okay, I'm hearing there's a comment, so let's hear it.
A comment from Bullet Munene says,
yes,
I had to lose that client,
Yeah.
and it was my big one, but
Yeah.
I could not cope on the demands and complaints.
I mean, you see, if it is affecting how you're running your business, if a customer is continuously complaining about your service delivery or your products, and it is affecting you to a point where you're not even able to look for other clients, or you're not able to deliver on other clients' orders, then maybe that is the time to let them go. And we'll get there when we're discussing at what point should we get, when now this is the time we need to let them go. Please add more comments. Tell us what happened. So what were the complaints about? And if you have any other question how to handle a customer, please flood our comment section. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear the experiences you're having with your customers. All right. So thank you for that comment, because that's what we're going into. The cost of keeping that customer happy is detrimental to your business. Wow, for this I think I will need a diagram. So what is the cost benefit analysis for a particular customer, and how do you decide whether or not to keep certain customers and how to drop them? So I will draw a graph here, and I hope you're able to see it. So here will be value. I hope you will be able to read this. I hope it's clear. Right? And here we will call this difficulty. All right. Now we will draw a quadrant here, and a graph going like that, and then we split that into two. Okay. So here is where we determine how much time we will be spending on our customers. Okay. If the customer gives us a lot of money, if this is 0 here, and this is high, and this is high, okay? So if our customer is easy to deal with and pays us very well, they fall under this quadrant. So this is high value, low difficulty. As you can see, the difficulty is low. If a customer is high value, high difficulty, they fall under this quadrant. So this is high value, high difficulty. All right? If a customer pays you very little money, but they're easy to deal with, they fall under this quadrant. So they're low value, but low difficulty. Now, if a customer is low value and they're also very, very difficult, they fall under this quadrant. So they're low value and high difficulty. I'm sure by now you have an idea of where you're placing your customers at this point. Make sure you're able to see. So based on how much money you're making from your customer and how little you have in terms of difficulty. Now, for a high value, low difficulty client, you want to spend 50% of your time here. And what does this mean? If you have, say for example, a CRM system where all your customers are in it and you're managing projects from there, if this one calls you, go. A client who's high value and they're easy to deal with, 50% of your time should be spent managing this work. Now, low value, low difficulty clients, because they are lower value, you only give them 25% of your time. Now, high value, highly difficult clients, you give them 25% of your time. What does that mean? Immediately, people who are low value and high difficulty, we give them 0%. So these are the clients you start dropping. You'll find when you start dropping this particular client and you're left with these two, you have more mind space to deal with people who are high difficulty, but they pay you well. Then the rest of the clients you're dealing with, 75% of the time, you're dealing with low difficulty clients, and these are easier to deal with and it makes your job easy to manage. So this is how, first of all, we determine where we place them in our quadrant and how much time we need to be spending with them. So customers who are not paying you and they're also difficult to deal with are not customers you should be keeping. And what you do in terms of now, how do you drop a client? It's you have a meeting with them, ensure any work that you needed to have been done by them is done. Do a handover of the project and say, we are very happy to have been dealing with you. We are now going to be engaging on a much, another project that, say for example, if you're offering services, a project that will be taking too much of our time. So we want to hand you over to someone who you would prefer. If there's another company that we can recommend to you, or if you have someone else who you'd want us to hand over to, we can hand over to that particular client. It doesn't have to be acrimonious. You don't have to let go of clients in a bad way. All you need to do is prepare everything that they needed and ensure that you have delivered to the best of your capacity, and then hand them over to somebody else to handle. Now, what happens if it is an irate client who has refused to pay and you're not able to complete the project? I think the best way is to have, if you're not able to speak to each other, have a mediator present. If it's a big deal, if it's something that is worth a lot of money, have an arbitrator present, and that's why you should always include arbitrators in your contract so that you're able to manage disputes without having to go to court. But if you're not able to go into arbitration, have a mediator present or a neutral party that both of you can listen to, and have that person mediate and close off the project where it is and then hand it over. Now, what happens? That is all nice and dandy, especially in project work. But what happens when you're retail, say for example you're a shop and you have a difficult client who's walked in, and say for example they're damaging the clothes or they're damaging the atmosphere, even just the atmosphere, they're making it difficult for other shoppers to buy anything. What do you do then? I think as we're thinking about that, I can be answering some questions, if any. All right, so, a client hired me to build a website. Then they started dictating every pixel disregarding my professional input. When I pushed back on a bad idea, they said, I'm the customer, do what I say. The final product looked terrible and they still blame me for how it turned out. Should I have refused to continue or swallowed my pride and just done what they asked? So I think the best thing, especially when you're in the professional space, is to not complete the project. And I'll tell you why. One, if you complete the project, that has your name stamp on it. If it goes out into the market looking that way, it won't matter who said what and who made the decisions on how the product will look like. The best thing to do, again, when you're going to deal with a customer, is get a written brief of everything that is needed for the project. If you need their input on things like pixels, colors, graphics, and things like that, have a form, a checklist that you have that the customer will sign off on. They're allowing you creative direction on a project as regards to some of the items you want to have control over. Let them sign that off in the contract. Number two, make sure the brief is within the contract so that we are not moving away from it. So that when they want to go away from it, you can cite the contract and say, this is a breach of terms of contract. I need you to pay me up to where we are, and this is where I'm handing over the project from. Don't allow work to go out to the market, especially something as sensitive as a website, with your name on it, because it's you who's going to suffer at the end. And I kid you not, all customers, even with their bad input, will still blame you for the end result. So it's important to stop the project at that particular point, discuss the project. Even if you're in between the project and at the beginning you didn't have a proper brief, you can always reintroduce it in the middle of a conversation and say, listen, I am not happy with the direction that we're going. And I think the thing we need to get over is we need to stop being afraid of our clients and afraid that they will leave us if we don't do what they want. I think it's important to let them know that there's a reason why they picked you as the expert in your field, and you have to have some creative direction because you're the one who understands how the end result will look like. All right, I think I'll pick another question as well. Someone is asking, I ran a fitness studio. One of the regulars began making inappropriate comments to a young trainer. My trainer complained and I confronted the client, who denied everything and accused my staff of being overly sensitive. He threatened to take his business elsewhere and expose us. I asked him not to return. Some members say I overreacted. Did I? I believe you did not overreact. At any point, you should protect your employees. Remember, at the end of the day, if an employee is working in an environment where they're being harassed, even if it's by clients, they're not going to be comfortable enough to lead. For example, if you have a young lady who is a trainer and she's being sexually harassed by a male client, they are not going to be comfortable to deal with other male clients because that will be the expectation she will have. It is our job as business owners to protect our employees against anything that will come in that direction. It's actually illegal to harass any person anywhere. There's a whole sexual harassment act that can support you and your decisions. So I believe in an environment, especially like that one where there's close contact, there's physical touch, because sometimes you're stretching the client and all that, it's important to have a sexual harassment act put up on the walls of the fitness center, so that you're able to communicate to your clients before they even harass your employees that they will be exited if anything were to happen. And if your clients are willing to leave because of something like that, let them. It's best to know that the employees will know we are protected here, and they will even work harder to ensure that you get other clients who are respectful. So I believe you made the right decision. All right. So I think we are ready to do a call in a minute or so. Yeah. So if you have any questions, comments, please comment in the comment section and we should be able to answer. Right. Hello, how are you?
Very well.
You had a question?
Yes, I had a question.
Yes.
How do you, just a moment, how do you train your team to push back respectfully when a client is wrong?
Okay. So if you have employees who are being harassed by a customer.
Yeah.
All right. So I think first is to ensure you have policies in place for harassment and sexual harassment. So we have harassment and sexual harassment. Ensure those policies are put in place in your business and that you have communicated those to your employees. And those policies should have a reporting mechanism. So number one, how do you handle a colleague or a customer who's harassing you? You give them a process which they follow. So if they're not able to handle it and communicate to the client, then they have an escalation process on who to talk to and how that person now will handle the client thereafter. But I think the most important thing is to teach your employees to communicate when they're uncomfortable with the conduct of the client, communicate to the client that this is not appropriate without being emotional, and then now the person who's being escalated the issue to can handle it from there. I hope that is clear enough. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, and here there's a question.
JW
Yes.
on YouTube asks,
Yeah.
how do I deal with a client who is high difficulty, high value on paper, but hardly pays on time and only after a lot of pressure?
Okay. Now, value here is not only based on the amount of money on the contract. Value here means that the pay you well and they pay you on time. So if a client, you value a client based on the money you have received. I think that I should have made very, very clear. You value a client based on the amount of money you have received from them, not based on the money they have promised to pay you. So if they pay you on a regular and they pay you without difficulty, remember difficulty could also mean difficulty in paying. So if the difficulty is high in terms of payment, then they stop being a high value client, they become a low value client. Because I mean, and we have dealt with clients like that who are high value contracts. A client is promising to pay you several millions, but the amount they have paid you, say maybe 200,000, and even with that, the project where you have reached is, they should have reached another milestone for payment, and you're having to maybe go back into your pocket or even seek financing to push the project through. That is not a high value client. That is a low value client, and they will now fall into this quadrant. So I hope that answers your question. All right. So I think we can continue. So maybe we could go and talk slightly more about protecting your team members from difficult clients. The first thing you need to put in place, as I said with the caller who had just called in, is number one, to ensure you have anti-harassment policies. These are critical. I don't know which organization in this day and age is operating without anti-harassment policies, because they don't just cover you as a company, it covers your employees, and an employee knows this is what I need to do if this happens to me. So the anti-harassment policy should cover both normal harassment and should cover sexual harassment. So if this happens, how do I stop it from continuing? So once you have the policy in place, it needs to be very clear in terms of defining what harassment is, defining what sexual harassment is, what is the first step when you identify the situation you're in is harassment. Number two, what do you tell the customer or tell the person? It could be even a colleague, could even be a supplier. What do you say at this point? If it does not stop, do you escalate the issue? Who do you escalate the issue to? What is the procedure for that? Do we call the customer, sit with them and tell them this incident has happened? If it is, how long are you giving the whole issue in terms of investigation? It needs to be very, very clear that we are going to investigate this matter in 3 days. It needs to be dealt with in the next 7 days, so that an employee is not sitting in an issue and wondering what's going to happen. That's number one. Number two, then you need to train the employees themselves. One, to be able to identify issues that are going to come up. Number two, on how to communicate, because sometimes harassment is a perception issue. Sometimes you might think you're being harassed and you're not. But your immediate reaction will determine whether a business relationship ends or not, or whether you get blacklisted on social media or you get cancelled, because we're in the cancellation culture. Right now it's very risky to treat a customer poorly, even if they're on the wrong. So you want to have very clear procedures on how a customer should be treated, even if they're on the wrong. So that employees learn how to communicate professionally, even when they're aggrieved, so that they're not caught in situations where they're in trouble on social media or they're in trouble in the public space because an angry customer just started recording, or someone who else was in the vicinity started recording at the wrong time. I believe a lot of us have seen a video circulating of an employee at Kenya Airways shouting at a particular customer. But because the video just started at the point where she was yelling at him, or was it started at that point, we never got the context. And yet, the employee had been abused in a racial manner and she was reacting. If she had had training on how to deal with certain issues, then there would not have been that situation. She would have been able to escalate that issue to someone more senior, and they'd have been able to remove that customer and put them in a place where they're not interfering with the work that they were doing, and then other customers are not having to deal with that discomfort. So it's important, number one, to have the policy. Number two, to communicate to to train your employees on how to handle this issue and ensure that you're removing them from that situation. And number 3, ensure that you're actioning on anything that you have put in place. If someone is harassing your employee, ensure you have cut that communication between the two of them. Maybe somebody else can handle the project. If it's continuous and the person is becoming difficult, this is a point where you need to decide whether you want to keep the customer or not. And if it becomes dangerous, maybe you will need to inform the authorities, because it can get bad for some people. So it's important that you action. Don't neglect it, so that people don't feel like they're exposed when they work for you. All right, I have another question here that I'll ask that we got. So we host corporate retreats. One CEO booked a package and insisted we allow his team to break house rules, including bringing alcohol, playing loud music, and smoking in non-smoking areas. When I said no, he said, "Do you know how much money I'm paying you?" I stood firm. He left a bad review and told other companies to avoid us. I sometimes wonder, should I have just bent the rules for the money? The beautiful thing about reviews is they give you the right of response. You could have very well even put a screenshot of your conversation between you and that particular customer as a response. The problem with most of us is that when we get bad reviews, we shy off from responding to what the situation is. But I see, especially if you're in the hospitality industry, because this happens a lot, and we heavily rely on customer reviews. Because right now, if you want to go to any hotel, you want to go to any space, we will go to Google to check the reviews, or we'll check on other applications that host reviews. You must respond to all of them, even if it's Booking.com or TripAdvisor. It doesn't matter. Please go and ensure that all the reviews you have gotten, whether good or bad, you are responding to them, because you're able to catch customer issues there. And customer feedback is important. Catch things that you need to action on. But even where the review is unfair, you're able to catch it and make sure that you respond to it and give evidence of why that customer is wrong. If you're able to screenshot that conversation and put it there, any reasonable client will see that this particular client was just being difficult. All right, so now, say we want to look at this, so we don't want to always be serious about things. So when customers are being difficult, how can we make it lighthearted? This is something I know I do a lot. I find that humor helps a lot. At times I will call a customer and they're rude to me, and because I've been in business for a long time, I'm not usually faced very quickly, but sometimes you can get there, and sometimes you will blow up. But what happens is you call them back after some time and tell them, hey, that fight was really bad. Do you think we should have coffee? Or can I take you for a cocktail? It's important that you always have a comeback, especially with a client that you value or who you have a long-term relationship. Always have a comeback and ensure that you have eased the situation. If it's a client you want to let go, you can tell them, listen, I think we are not the guys for you. I think we can get other people who maybe can work with your temperament or can work with your demands. For us, I think we just require a certain level of clientele who we can easily manage. Use humor as much as possible to diffuse situations. It helps it because, sometimes the customer you're dealing with is having a bad day, or they're being hormonal, or they're being, something has happened and they're just taking it out on everybody. If you use humor, you will diffuse the situation and you'll be able to even build a stronger relationship with the client. But however, there are people who it doesn't matter what tactic you use. It could be humor, it could be tough love, but they're just difficult to deal with. These are the people now you let go, because if you're not able to sever relationships with customers who are not giving you any value, you'll end up wasting a lot of time dealing with issues where you could spend that same time looking for more customers, thinking about strategy, or dealing with other customers who are better at your own organization. So I think this is a pretty straightforward conversation in terms of what to do with customers. And if we don't have any other question, I think we will end here. Thank you for those who participated. Please go back to this video, share it with someone who you know is doing business, and we hope that we help you. And if you have any questions that we have not answered and this line is already over, please feel free to DM us or even just comment on the video itself, and we will get back to you with the answers. Thank you very much for your time and have a good one.